Today I wanted to talk about fasting. Now, I haven't talked about fasting much in the past because I tend to avoid extreme approaches to nutrition, but I get asked about fasting all of the time, and I know there's a lot of confusion about it. So what I wanted to do today is help you make sense of it all. I think one of my jobs as a coach is to help you find balance. And the balance with fasting, in my opinion, especially as women getting older, lies in a much gentler approach. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Before we get into the approach that I would recommend if you want to try fasting, what I wanted to do is run you through the potential benefits, but also problems that you might experience with fasting. So the first thing that you need to know is that fasting is a stressor. And if you're somebody who's already under a lot of stress, then adding fasting into the mix can just be too much for your body. And what might happen, and what happens to a lot of people, is that they have a worsening of their symptoms over time. So you might find that you're even more fatigued or more moody, or you might worsen any hormonal problems if you add fasting in when you're just not in a great place in life to be doing that. I think the main reason that most women turn to fasting is for weight loss, and chances are you've heard from friends and family that have lost weight while fasting. Chances are you might have lost weight from fasting at some point in your life, and it definitely can work for weight loss. But if you're somebody who's already under a lot of stress, then you need to remember that there are much gentler ways to lose weight. And the reason that fasting actually works for weight loss is because people tend to clean up their diets and eat less calories when they're fasting. There's nothing magic about fasting. It really does come down to caloric restriction. And when you have shorter periods of time during the day when you're not eating, it is easier to eat less because you have less time of the day that you're eating. So that's why fasting works. And you really need to keep this in mind when you're being constantly exposed to all the hype about it. I mean, with social media, we just hear about all these extreme approaches, and it's so easy to get sucked in. But you have to always think, well, what is going to work best for me and what's going to be sustainable in the long run? Because in my experience, women who lose weight and keep it off are the ones that tend to take a more gentler, phased approach, and they sort of phase things in, and they make subtle changes, and over time these are changes that they're able to sustain, and therefore as they lose weight they're able to keep it off. And so you always have to bear that in mind when you're on social media and when you're hearing from friends and family. And I know how hard that is, believe me. I mean, this is something that I deal with my clients on a daily basis. But that's the first thing that you really need to understand when it comes to fasting. The other time of life when it might not be appropriate is if you are having any hormonal problems or if you are trying to have a baby, because as women we're really sensitive to caloric restriction, to carb restriction, to anything extreme, because we have this delicate balance of hormones every month, and it's so easy to disrupt it. And especially if you are perimenopausal, your hormones are already probably out of whack, and so doing something really extreme can make whatever situation you're facing worse. So that's another really important thing to bear in mind. So what can you do if you are still going to give fasting a go? Well, I think this is where the answer lies in a much gentler approach. And I like to encourage my clients to think about something called time-restricted eating instead of fasting. It's the same thing, but I think it's a mindset shift. And I think it differentiates it from more extreme fasting approaches like the 16-8 method or alternate day fasting or water fasting. So what I wanted to talk about today is time-restricted eating. Now, for me personally, I've never had an interest in fasting. I knew about the potential negative effects of it, and I have a really good metabolism, and I didn't want to screw anything up. The last 10 years of my life have been pretty full on. I've been trying to build a business. I bought a house. I had relationship challenges. I had some major hormonal issues. And so I just knew that fasting wasn't something that I wanted to throw in the mix. So now, however, that I'm single, I'm mostly an online entrepreneur, I have my own schedule, my life is much less stressful. And I've actually recently started fasting. And I wanted to tell you about my experience because it demonstrates this whole idea of time-restricted eating. So time-restricted eating just means that you have a window of time in your 24 hours where you're eating and then where you're not eating. So my fasting window, as it's called, is about 14 hours. I tend to finish eating quite late because I work late, and so I actually don't finish my dinner until 9 p.m. most nights, which I know is later than most of you. And what I do is I don't actually have breakfast until 11 a.m. And I haven't been doing this for weight loss benefits or even really for the longevity benefits of fasting, although it's great if I do experience some of those. I've been doing this purely out of convenience. Lately, I've just been finding that I prefer to get up and get a lot of work done before I get into other things like eating and going to the gym. And I also have been going to the gym around 1 p.m. most days. And I like to eat quite close to going to the gym so that I have more energy when I'm there. So I've been eating my breakfast around 11 a.m., having a coffee, and then heading off to the gym. And this schedule has just worked better for me in terms of my overall productivity. The other benefit of it is that I have just been finding preparing meals is a real hassle. And if I don't eat my breakfast until 11 a.m. and I go to the gym around 1, most days I don't have lunch until 3 p.m. And so that means I don't have the need for a snack in the afternoons. So for me, fasting or time-restricted eating has just been really convenient. And so for you, what this could look like in practice is that if you're somebody who finishes dinner around 6:30 or 7 p.m. most nights, then you would just wait to eat your breakfast until say 9 or 10 a.m. the next day. And I think that this is a more gentler approach than some of the extreme approaches out there. Now, if you are somebody who trains really early in the morning, because I get asked about this a lot, then you would just try to finish your dinner a bit earlier and make sure you get something to eat post-workout, so around 8 a.m., because it's really important that you replenish your body and that you give yourself a good hit of protein and carbs just for your energy, but also to make sure that you are able to build muscle. And in fact, if you were to train and not eat for a long time afterwards, you can actually be in what's called a catabolic state, which means that you can actually start breaking down muscle, which as we get older is really not what we want happening. So I know some of you will be wondering, how long should your fasting window be? Well, that really depends on you and your lifestyle. Most people who practice time-restricted eating will fast for at least 13 to 14 hours. Some people might do it a little bit longer. If you want the longevity benefits of it, it may be that you need to fast for 17 to 18 hours. But I just wanted to remind you again about the importance of being gentle with yourself, and don't feel like you have to be super rigid with it. If you have days where you're going to be really busy or you know you're going to be super stressed out, then you might just want to get up and eat and just really focus on taking care of your body rather than being so rigid with your fasting. So I hope you found this video helpful. Remember, when you're on social media and you're seeing all these benefits of fasting or other extreme diets, that it really just comes down to the fact that people are restricting their calories and cleaning up what they eat. And if you want a more gentle approach to training and nutrition, then I wanted to remind you about my programs. I'll leave a link to them in the description of this video and you can check them out after watching. Leave me questions in the comments. I'm always happy to get back to you there. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you again next time.